Hi guys, I wanted to spend a little time today talking about the mirror modifier, going a little bit more in depth. So I'm going to go ahead and add a cube, Control A, Mesh, Cube to the scene. And the first thing I want to point to is that with my cube selected, you see there's a teeny tiny little orange dot there, and then there's also this kind of target looking thing. The little orange dot is the origin of your object. The target is the location of your cursor. And by default, the location of your cursor is right at the intersection of your axes, and the origin of object is at the center of your object by default. Now, if you don't see if any of this is missing from your scene, go up here to your little double circles here, your overlays, and just make sure that you have your axes selected here in blue. You see if I turn it on and off, and make sure over here under objects you're showing the origin. So if I turn it off, it's a little hard to see because it's so tiny. That little orange dot disappears and reappears. Okay, so just make sure you have those selected. If you're not seeing it, that's why. And also make sure that you have your 3D cursor, because I can toggle that on and off too. So your axes, your 3D cursor, and your origins. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and add a mirror modifier. I'm going to go to my little monkey wrench here. I'm going to go to modifiers. I'm going to go to generate, and I'm going to go down to mirror. And nothing happens. Now, the reason nothing happened is that the mirror modifier by default uses the origin of the object as its mirror position. So it the origin of the object is right smack in the center of the object. So the mirror is happening. It's just mirroring cube on top of itself. So let me show you if I were to apply this mirror and go into edit mode. And then I'm just going to go into face select mode. I'm just going to hover and select L. L will select anything that's linked with that face. And I'm going to grab and going to move it out of the way. So you see I have two cubes because this cube just mirrored itself onto itself. Okay, so let's go ahead and delete that and go back into object mode. This time I'm going to apply, this time I'm going to I'm going to apply the mirror modifier first, generate mirror. And this time I'm going to move it on the x-axis, GX. And still nothing happened. Why is that? Because when I move, let me Control Z and do that again. Look at the little orange dot, which is the origin of the cube. When I grab it on the X in object mode, you notice that the little dot, the origin of this object, traveled along with the object itself, right? So anytime I move it, that orange dot is coming along for the right, meaning the origin of the object has moved, but so has the origin of the object. Let me Control Z back. Now, if I go to edit mode and press A to select all, and again grab on the X, you see my mirror. You can see the mirrored object. They're no longer stacked, but you notice the little orange origin of the object stays put. So if you move things in edit mode, the origin of the object stays put. If you move them in object mode, it moves along with the object. So just be careful when you have a mirror modifier or any modifier, but particularly mirror modifier. Be just kind of thoughtful about what mode you're in, whether in edit mode or object mode. And no harm, no foul if you were, let me Control Z back to here in object mode. Let me go ahead and move it on the X. I have the mirror. I can't see it. The origin is in the wrong place. You can just apply your modifiers and you get the same effect. You're moving the origin of the object back to the center. So now when it mirrors it about the origin of the object, it will mirror it correctly. Now, notice here my axis I've selected for it to mirror on is the X, because the work is happening on the x-axis. And if you look at it from the top, you notice there's a difference between this origin, this little yellow dot, and the beginning of the mesh is this distance here, and this distance is what's mirrored. So this original cube is being mirrored the same distance from this yellow dot on the other side of the x-axis over here, right? The other side of the origin on the x-axis over here. If I were to mirror this on the y-axis also, again, nothing happens. The reason is on the y-axis, this object is still centered, right? There's no distance happening on the y-axis. If I go into edit mode and do A to select all and grab it on the y-axis. So now you see there's a distance on the y-axis. Now it's going to mirror not only on the x-axis but on the y-axis too. It's a little bit confusing because my distance on my, see, it's the distance along the y-axis with, but the x-axis is in the center. But just think of it, it's the distance along the y-axis here and the distance along the x-axis here. And again, if I wanted to mirror on the z-axis, I'm going to have to give it some, let me go to the side view here. I need to give it some distance along the z-axis. So I'm going to grab it and move it on the z. And you see now there's some distance on the z-axis. And what's really powerful about this is now I have 8 cubes in my scene, but in reality I only really have one, and the rest of them are projections of this one. So what do I gain by that? It means that any work I do on this one will be reflected on all 8 of them. So it's an enormous time saver if you have a symmetrical object. So if I were to go in here and dissolve that edge there, it dissolves in all of them. See? And if I were to go up here and select all and just move it like that, I can get, and then let's move it up too. I can get a kind of an interesting looking object here, and I can play with it and do a bunch of things. It's an enormous time saver, the mirror object, for anything that's symmetrical. Okay, so that's mirror modifier mode 101. Let's go into object mode, and I'm just going to delete this cube, and I'm going to add another cube. I want to show you the next level of the mirror modifier. Now I have my, again, I have my cube, and I'm going to go into edit mode and grab it on the move it on the X. Let me look at it from the front here, the minus Y view, which is the front. I've moved it on the X, so there's a distance on the X axis. And before we were using, I'm in edit mode, so my origin of my object remain the same. So if I were to apply a mirror modifier, it would work just fine. But I want to show you a different way to mirror. I'm going to add an object, another cube. I'm just going to squish it. Well, actually, just on the X here. I'm actually going to scale it on a little bit too, and squish it some more. I just want it to look more like a line. So I have this other object here. Now, this time I'm going to select my cube, and instead of just having it regular here, I'm going to go down here where it says mirror object. I'm going to click on this little magnifying glass, and I'm going to click on this new cube that I added, and see it added its name, cube 001. Now, instead of using its own origin, it's using this object to mirror on. What are the advantages of that? Now, let's say I wanted to rotate these cubes. When you rotate an object, it rotates around its own origin. So if I were to rotate this cube, it's going to rotate along the origin over here. So you see? But what if I just want to rotate it kind of in place? So I can go up to this object, I can go up to here, set origin to center of mass. Now you see the, did that work? Origin, center volume, there we go. And I'm not seeing my origin for some reason. Do I have it turned off? No, it's still there. Oh, that's why, because this is my real object. I'm looking at the mirrored object instead of the real object. Okay, so when I did that, let me show you that again. Looking in the right place. I'm going to apply my transform just to bring it back over there. So the origin of my object is over there in the center. If I go up here to object, set origin to center mass volume, you see how my origin jumped back to the center of this object, but my mirror is unaffected because my mirror is now using this object to mirror against, not the center of the object that I'm mirroring. It's using the second object as the mirror. Okay, so now it means that when I rotate this object, it's just going to rotate about itself and not about the center. And it's really a convenient way to mirror your objects and have easier way to do other manipulations with the origin and the center of the object, or somewhere else. If I wanted to move the origin of this object to one of the corners, because I wanted to rotate it around that corner, I can do that without messing up my mirror. Okay, so that's kind of a little further, a deeper look at the mirror modifier. There's a lot of other things that we will go over in future classes, but this is just a little more in depth on the kind of basic and a little plus basics of the mirror modifier.